What's up, everybody? Welcome to Targeting Winners, episode 7 of season 2. Our way too early SEC preview. Heading into the late spring and summer months, spring games are happening. First round of the NFL draft happened last night. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But how you guys been? What's going on, Darren?
Not much, man. How you doing today?
Pretty good, Pete.
Doing fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm doing well. Sorry I missed last episode. I was in hell on earth and in the middle of hurricane territory. But I've survived and made it out. Didn't get anything on me. Not too bad. So listen to the Big Ten preview show, and you guys did a pretty good job without me. Obviously not as well as if I was there.
We did what we could. You put me in charge of tech. That was mistake number one. So, we tried to make you proud, Coach. Hopefully, we didn't suck too badly.
No, it was very fine.
Pete loves him some Iowa, so we
I do
something. I don't blame him.
Boy, leave you guys alone for one episode. Now you're betting Iowa.
Listen, it's season 2, baby. People still listen to us, so we got to think a little bit outside the box. And I'm on board. I'm totally on board. I like everything Pete had to say about it. I mean, Cade McNamara can stay upright with that defense, and no reason why they can't be in that Big Ten title game. And nice juicy number. I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Captain Hedge.
We brought Pete on for a reason, darn it. And see, this is why, because he knows what the hell he's talking about.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll find out.
So what did you guys think of the first round last night? We interesting players, interesting fits for some teams, I thought.
Atlanta is stupid. That's all I have to say about the draft.
Yes, that is a good observation.
Thank you.
I don't know. Is Kirk Cousins going to be ready by the spring? Didn't he have an Achilles tear?
He's no healthier than Penix. I mean, the only thing I don't understand, I don't really follow NFL owners too much, but I just don't get why you throw $100 million guaranteed at Kirk Cousins and then, draft a guy who's pushing 24 years old and tell the media that he's going to sit for 4 or 5 years before he plays. I
don't think he's going to sit. I think he sits, 2 years max. I think after 2 years they can dump Kirk Cousins, and it won't cost him too much in the cap.
But still, he's coming in unproven at 26 years old at that point. I mean,
well, he says 2 years. Sit behind. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. I've been saying that for months. I would have, I like him at what they get him at 9, 10?
8. I think 8? It was
8. Yeah.
I like him at 8 better than Caleb Williams at 1. So
I do as well.
I don't like some of those throws I saw in the Oregon game and the Texas games. I just can't unsee how perfectly he put those right in a 1.5 by 1.5 window. So I just can't unsee that. And he can still run, and he, injury. Everybody gets hurt. Everybody's going to get hurt. I mean, there were 6 quarterbacks drafted last night. At least 3 of them are going to have season-ending injuries, I'm sure, but within the next 5 years. So hopefully not, but that's just the way it is.
His over-under draft position was 32.5, though. I mean, you could have – I don't know. They just have other needs. I mean, so you just drafted somebody else who won't throw to Kyle Pitts? Awesome. Whatever. Whatever. I mean, I hate my own team, but it's good to know that Atlanta's just as stupid as the Cowboys are. So, whatever.
Well, rumor has it they're going to get Trey Benson tonight. So we'll have to tune in later on and see that.
Yeah, I'll be betting hockey or something and not caring because it's the Jones boys, and they're just dumb as the Falcons.
Well, they got a good kid last night. I felt good for that kid.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted a position of need. So Jerry was obviously on his meds because he didn't do anything stupid.
Keep him sedated.
Still early. Yeah, I mean,
duct tape him to the chair. Don't let him.
Pretty much.
But you see the family; they're all from Austin. He went to Oklahoma. You can tell the whole family grew up Cowboys fans, so they were just all jacked.
They draft everybody within a 100-mile radius of the stadium. You have to play football in Texas or Oklahoma, or the Cowboys don't want anything to do with you. I mean,
right. Well,
D-Lamb, Oklahoma. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's a good state to draw from. There's a lot of football talent in Texas. So
there is, but the Cowboys still suck year after year because another guy we took from nearby Texas, Dak Prescott from Mississippi State, is terrible as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, you are 5 minutes into the show and I'm already bitter. All right, anyway.
Would you rather the Cowboys took Michael Penix?
I didn't expect that question. No. But I mean, at the pick that they had, yeah, they traded down to 27, 28 or something. Yeah, that would have been a good place to take him. But they're a train wreck. Thank God my Orioles don't suck because otherwise sports would just blow. Anyway, let's go on.
Let's move on.
Please, let's move on.
On that note, yes.
On that note, today we're previewing the SEC. A little less work this week because only 18 teams, right? 16. 18?
Had 18 last time.
Yeah, I mean, the workload keeps getting lighter and lighter, I guess.
And this is the conference even the casual football fan, knows something about. Georgia's dominance 2 of the last 3 years. Alabama always being in the title picture for the last decade. You can't turn on the TV on a weekend evening and not see the SEC play. I call it the Saturday evening conference because every time you turn on the channel where there's college football, it's always SEC. So good conference to wrap up with here, covering the Big Four. So we'll get into it and see if there's any bets to be made here.
Well, obviously the key additions, Texas and Oklahoma coming over. And
Indeed.
To add to the top, because I always thought it was only 1 or 2 teams at the top, and the rest is just, mid-level teams at best. And now you got 4 teams at the top with a couple extra sprinkled in maybe. So should we start at the bottom, work our way up?
Well, let's just go. This conference also ditched divisions. So I think there's only the Sun Belt is like the only conference that actually has divisions left. So, all these teams battling for the top 2 spots, only 8 conference games, despite there being 16 teams. So, yeah, let's do what we normally do is start at the bottom and hopefully, some of these teams are so terrible, but you know what? We're going to talk about them anyway. So,
speaking of terrible, when you think of terrible, terrible, but they're smart. You got Vanderbilt. So hopefully they're smart enough to know that they're terrible. So we got Vanderbilt and we got Mississippi State. They are the longest odds. What are they at, like 22,000 or something like that?
Vandy is plus 100,000 if you really have nothing else to do with your bankroll, and Mississippi State plus 30,000. These are DraftKings numbers, by the way. They graced us with some odds in the last 2 weeks, so that's who we're using for this show.
I got nothing on either of these two. I think they both suck. They're not going to contend at all. If they're lucky, I think I'm looking at the schedule cube here. I don't see a winnable game for Vanderbilt at all in the SEC. Not one winnable game. So
it's funny you mentioned that because they were the only team in the conference last year that didn't have any conference wins, so they could very well repeat
back to back, baby. Get those t-shirts ready.
They do have one of our favorite quarterbacks. They got the New Mexico State kid, Diego Pavia.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's about the only interesting thing I found about them. But defense terrible. No signs of getting any better. You touched on the schedule. I just see nothing promising for this team in the near future.
I'm seeing 2 and whatever. They can probably beat Georgia State and Alcorn State, maybe, but then they got to play Virginia Tech. And then it's just, Alabama, Texas, LSU, Tennessee. Sorry, kids. Not looking good for them. Mississippi State, they can have all the cowbell in the world. They're not going to win anything either. I see maybe 2 wins for them.
Pete, are you just throwing up? You have nothing to add on any of these 2 programs, or like what?
I have forgotten that Vandy had a football team, so I guess that doesn't matter. I'm not sure they actually do have a football team, but I got very little. Yeah, I could see Mississippi State winning a couple of games. Vandy's not going to win any in the conference, so completely irrelevant.
Yeah, Mississippi State, worst offense in the conference last year. They did bring in the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, though, to take over their head coaching job. Baylor transfer, Blake Shapen coming in to maybe start at quarterback. But yeah, brutal schedule. I mean, just their road games: Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Yeah, not looking good for these guys either.
All right. Well, let's move on, shall we?
Please.
Slightly less depressing. At plus 20,000, they have Arkansas and Florida. Florida's intriguing. I mean, I do like the plus 20,000. The good news is that they'll probably be 7-0 heading into the last 5 games. The bad news for them is they could be 7-5 at the end of those 5 games. They do. Let me see. They do have LSU at home and they have Ole Miss at home, so they could only have 2 SEC losses. They got Texas in Texas and they have Georgia here in Jacksonville. They have obviously end up with Florida State at the end. They have Kentucky in Gainesville this year. They play on the road at Tennessee, but I mean, especially down here, it's like they always beat Tennessee. How many times has Tennessee beaten them in the last 20 years? Maybe like 2 or 3 times. It just seems one of those things you can always count on Florida beating Tennessee, even when they're not supposed to. A couple of years ago, Tennessee was supposed to whoop them up, and Florida ended up somehow eking out a victory. So that's intriguing at plus 20,000. I'm almost tempted, but no. Arkansas, I don't see them. I would almost put Arkansas with Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, but they're just not that bad, but they're almost bad enough. I don't know what you guys thought about Arkansas at all.
I mean, hide your motorcycles and your hookers because Bobby Petrino's back in town. He's the offensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, they lose KJ Jefferson. They got the kid from Boise, Taylor Green, who would have one good week and then one crap week. He's not even guaranteed to start. Their top 2 tacklers hit the portal. They knew what was coming. A lot of good teams on their schedule. They do have a lot of them at home, but just a bad offense, 3rd worst defense in the conference. I don't see anything here. And Florida, shout out to Graham Mertz. I mean, you've been terrible for like 9 years, and you finally put together a halfway decent year last year. But that defense is just so awful. I don't, even at plus 20,000, I can't see doing anything with them.
No, they do have Texas A&M at home.
They do.
So,
yeah, I mean, so Arkansas, I mean, their schedule's terrible. Too much turnover, so I don't. They're going to have a rough year. It's not. I just don't see anything happening positive there. Florida, I mean, very similar to what Tim said. I mean, I don't think they're that bad of a team. Their schedule is brutal, especially those last 5 games. I mean, playing Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State back to back is a problem for anybody, honestly. And a team that's not top tier playing that schedule. I honestly, if they win one of those games, I would be surprised. I think they could very well lose all 5 of those games. Unfortunately for them, because I think they're not a terrible team, but their schedule's not playing for them.
Yeah, I could see them being ranked pretty high after the first 7, totally being a top 10 team. It usually happens. I don't know why. Don't get me started on the polls. I mean, I think they're the most useless thing, but that's the way it usually works. They'll be ranked like 8 or 9 after the first 7 games, and then they'll fall to 12, then 16, then 20, and they'll just fall further and further and further. And they'll fall just far enough that when they play Florida State, they can say, well, Florida State didn't play anybody. So they didn't have any ranked teams or whatever. And so plus 20,000 is, I mean, there's talent there. I mean, you can't, I'm not sure about the coach. I know a lot of the Florida fans I talk to, they're not really sure about the coach as well. I'm hearing cautious optimism, I guess you can call it, is what I'm hearing down here. But yeah, the last 5 games, I think they can win 1 or 2 max. They're not winning more than 2 of those 5. There's no way.
Yeah.
Dude, all I'm going to tell you is FanDuel has their over/under win total at 5.5, and that's plus money if you want to go over. So
what is it?
Tell all your cautious optimistic fans to.
What's the line on that? What is that?
It's over 5.5 is plus 156. So if you really like your Floridas, I would recommend taking a shot there. But there's
I
no way
can totally
in hell.
see him covering that though in the first 7 games.
Well, that makes a lot more sense than betting them at plus 20,000 to win this conference because we all know that that's not happening. So if their non-conference schedule looks doable to you, I will suggest you jump on that 5.5, some nice plus money.
Yeah, I mean they got Samford, I mean Central Florida. I mean that could be one way or the other. 1, 2. They better beat Miami. God, I hate those people.
They're not beating Miami.
Mississippi State.
Cam Ward's going to be invited to the Heisman ceremony after he plays Florida.
Okay, let's just say they beat Miami. Let's say they lose to Miami. Samford, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Central Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky are all winnable games. That's 6. So at 5.5, I'm tempted, Darren. You got me thinking now.
Okay, well, you can think, and like I said, if your app doesn't offer that, we can talk finances. I'll get you in.
All right.
I got you for any futures bets that you can't make down there in Florida.
All right. Well, let's move on to
yes, lads.
We got South Carolina and Kentucky is in our next group. South Carolina is interesting, I think. I don't see them. They got a tough schedule, but they seem to be getting better. I mean, the bar is pretty low there. Kentucky, I mean, they have an interesting game. Let me see, who are they playing? They got Ohio this year as far as their non-conference game. But again, I see 3 or 4 losses for Kentucky, so that doesn't put them in the championship game. South Carolina, I see 3. I don't think that's going to be enough. Good enough record to get them into the championship game as well as far as a hedge. So I'm going to leave these 2 teams alone, actually.
Agreed. Nothing here I like here. South Carolina, interesting quarterback, Lenora Salters. He'll be a sophomore taking over for Spencer Rattler. But again, road games against Bama and Oklahoma, that's probably 2 losses. They get Ole Miss and Missouri at home. They're probably losing one of those. So that kind of puts them out of the running. Kentucky does get Brock Vandergriff, who's a Georgia transfer. So they may have something there. But again, they've got Georgia at home. Wherever you play Georgia, it's never a promising thing. But then going to Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas. That's just 3 of those 4 games they're probably losing as well. So that would eliminate them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They could play Georgia on the moon, and I don't think it would matter. It doesn't matter home or away. Yeah, Georgia is one of those teams. That's the new. I mean, we'll see what Kalen DeBoer does in Alabama, but that's the new Alabama standard in the SEC. Is going to be Georgia. They don't. Hey, that's not my dog for a change.
No, those are my 2. Apparently, they're not fans of your Kentucky bashing.
Apparently not.
I was just complimenting the Bulldogs. I figured they'd like that, but
they're not Bulldogs. They're
that's true. They're dogs.
But nobody calls their team the Labs, so you don't worry about that. While you guys talk about the next thing, I'm going to shut this door before they, maybe they're eating somebody. I don't know. Hold on, I'll be right back. Move on.
Darren's dogs will eat someone for our listening pleasure. So Kentucky, South Carolina. I don't know if you had anything to add there, Pete, but I'm not touching any of those 2 teams, and we can just move on to the next group of 2.
Yeah, let's do that. These 2 teams are in my bottom third. I broke the conference into 3 tiers, and they're in the bottom tier. So
the next one's Auburn. Again, a lot of this just comes down to the schedule. I mean, they get Oklahoma at home. Who else do they get? Well, I mean, all the other tough games are on the road. They got Georgia on the road, Missouri on the road, Alabama on the road. They got Texas A&M at home. That's something, I guess. But, I'm not seeing Auburn. I almost would have lobbed Auburn in with Kentucky and South Carolina. Just getting better, but just not good enough where I'm really remotely interested just looking at their schedule, putting any kind of money on them. There's really nothing there for me.
Yeah, Peyton Thorne just not a good QB. No, they had a good defense last year, but offensively he was just didn't even have 1,800 yards passing, 16 TDs, 10 picks. Road games against Georgia, Missouri, and Bama. Sorry, but if you can't score, you're not winning much. And even the home game against Oklahoma, Oklahoma's going to score. So I agree with possibly dropping them a little lower here, but just don't see it with them.
Same. I have nothing. I mean, different than that. At the end of it, their schedule is too tough. Their offense is largely inept, and I don't see what they're going to do here.
Right. So now it starts to get a little interesting, I think. I think we're going to cut into the top half, I guess. Maybe it's almost half or a little more than half. We got Oklahoma. Now, just from a talent standpoint or on a reputation standpoint, you see them at plus 4,000. That's the same odds I got for Colorado in the Big 12. Obviously, this is not the Big 12. But that I wouldn't really, kill somebody for playing any money on Oklahoma here because they do have fairly decent schedule. They got Texas always. That's a neutral site game. They got Alabama at home. They have LSU on the road. Any other tough? I don't see any other games.
Yeah, really. There's a lot of tough games. They got Tennessee at home, then they go to Ole Miss and Missouri. I know the Big 12 commissioner was mad about them leaving. He must have had a favorite. He was like, "Hey, SEC schedule maker, please slaughter the Sooners." This does not look good at all.
Yeah, I'm just down. I'm not down on, or I'm not with Ole Miss being like this powerhouse or a juggernaut. And you got Tennessee, but they got them at home, and that's a winnable game. It's definitely a winnable game.
I agree.
I mean, I'm just highlighting the games that the odds are probably in the favor that they're going to lose. And I have Texas, Alabama, and LSU just because it's in Baton Rouge. I mean, we're going to see what Kelly is for coaching this year with all the talent that he lost that was drafted last night. So, I mean,
I know Pete's a totals guy, and he's probably got Oklahoma LSU like over 87.5, ready to fire.
You better believe it. That'll be rolling out there. This Oklahoma team is just interesting. I don't think the team is bad. I think their schedule is challenging. I don't think it's overly difficult. I think it's challenging. I have them anywhere between 7 wins and 9 wins. I mean, they could be kind of anywhere in that range. I mean, they could be surprising. I think what's the number on Oklahoma right now? Plus 4,000?
4,000.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I wouldn't bet that, but I don't hate it. I mean, I think they could be surprising.
Yeah, I mean, if Jackson Arnold is as good as everybody says he is, there's certainly no limit on where they can go. I mean, he only played one game, and that was the Alamo Bowl. And after he got those 3 picks out of his system early on, he was pretty good. But now you're going from a kid who's probably used to playing in the Big 12 with a bunch of those teams that don't play defense.
Right.
Power conference to power conference is not usually something I say, well, that's a huge negative. Like if they were coming from the Sun Belt and going to the SEC, you're getting slaughtered. But the Big 12 is probably the weakest of these Power 4 conferences just from quality of competition. I think a young QB like this who could be promising might need a year to get used to what he's about to experience. So I think that schedule, I think is a little tougher than what you guys are thinking, and that's totally cool. But I think anytime you throw a young QB against a lot of these defenses, that there could be some growing pains here. I mean, 4,000 is a nice number, but I wouldn't touch it.
Right. Well, let's move on because now this is my first unofficial lean here. I'm leaning. We're going to talk about Texas A&M plus 2,000. I mean, they've got a favorable schedule. Now they have an interesting game to lead off the season at home against Notre Dame.
We should be talking about that because I believe that's a neutral site game. I think that's in Atlanta. I don't think that's a home game for. I thought I was looking at it because I agree with your thoughts about Texas A&M, and I thought about maybe waiting till they play that game, even though it's not a conference game. But week 1 in college football. It is overreaction Sunday after all those games on Saturday.
What I was thinking.
So if for some reason Texas A&M loses that game, everybody's going to freak out and bet against them, any futures bets or week 2 bets. I like where your head's at, man. I mean, I like Connor Wegman. I like Elko taking over as the head coach. I mean, they lost a lot, like right at the beginning of that transfer portal window, but no real tough road games. Now, Missouri, LSU, and Texas are all at home. But that Notre Dame game, even though it's not conference, I think just because it's week 1, that's going to be huge if you're interested in betting on this team.
Well, according to ESPN, I got that game. It says in College Station.
Oh, really? For some reason, I thought it was like a neutral site game, but
that's what I was thinking. That plus 2,000. If Notre Dame wins like 31-14 or something like that, that could go to like 4,000 easily.
Yeah, and then you would jump on it because they're still 0-0 in conference. So yeah, I totally see where you're going.
I mean, the bottom line, they got LSU at home, they have Texas at home. Okay, they have Florida on the road, and that's in one of those games that I think Florida could win up in the early part of the season. You know, they got their road games, Mississippi State, totally winnable. South Carolina, totally winnable. They got Missouri at home. Arkansas, it says Arlington is where that game is. Totally winnable games here. This could be one of our, hopefully. So, yeah, you actually want to root for Notre Dame to, like, kick the crap out of them. Let the number go up, get nice and juicy, bet on them.
I'd be doing that anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes without
I'm sure Pete will be too, because we've already.
Yes, I will be doing that as well.
We can't have our Notre Dame starting off 0-1 and potentially winning the national championship. That'd be very bad. So
we don't want that
rooting for the Fighting Rahibs like maniacs on August 30th.
Yeah, well, that would be my bet is bet A&M. Hopefully they lose on August 31st.
And then bet on them on September 1st.
Well, yeah, totally winnable games. And then hopefully it gets down to the Oklahoma State from last year's range. And then if they get into that game.
Why you got to bring that up, man?
Well,
why you got to bring that up?
Well, if we didn't suck the last week against BYU, we would have had a nice little hedge to make some money, but
I can't control that.
We're
in season 2 now. Season 1's in the past. Let's not.
That's right.
Okay.
Bam.
Thank you.
So
but I get where you're coming at.
Yeah. So now we're getting to the territory where the numbers are, decent numbers, but I still don't think they're good enough. They're really, really good teams. I just don't think they're good enough. We're talking about Missouri and Tennessee. So Missouri is the other first Big 12 team, along with A&M, to come on over to the SEC. Was that about 9-10 years ago? How long has it been? It's been a bit. I forget when they first did that. Was it 2012, 2013? It's been a bit. Anyway, they were the first ones to do it. So what do you guys think about Missouri? Let's start with them.
Well, all right. This is actually one of my picks. So excited about Missouri. I think from the price perspective, I think there's something to really like there. Their schedule sets up really nicely for them this year, I think, and that's leaning heavily into that. Offense should be effective. This is a team that can score, and I expect that will be the case. They did get some transfers in on the defensive side, which should help them. So I think this is a rather enticing number for me. What was that number right now? It's at
1,400. I got
1,400. I've seen a few other sites where it's 1,500. I probably am going to put a unit on Missouri here as my long shot pick, just because they are a good team. Yes, this is a very top heavy conference, and so it's going to be challenging for them to win it, of course. But I think they have a shot. I mean, they're a really good team. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brady Cook coming off a great year. Luther Burden coming back at wide receiver. Oklahoma, maybe the only tough game at home. Going to A&M, certainly winnable. Going to Bama, who I believe is going to have some defensive issues, at least towards the start of the season. Also winnable. Yeah, I agree with everything Pete said. I mean, I'm not betting it. I'm staying away from this conference, but I totally agree with where he's going with this.
Yeah, I can see them having a 2-loss at the most this year, and that might be good enough to get them into the game. It depends on what happens with Georgia and Texas. Obviously, they're the top 2 teams. We'll get to them shortly, but yeah, that's a solid play. And the other one I was talking about is Tennessee. I just don't have faith in Tennessee. They're going to lose to Florida this year. Just lock that up. No matter what happens, I mean, 8 out of 10 years, Florida beats them. I mean, the odds are in the favor. So even though everything says Tennessee should beat Florida, it's just one of those things. You can't spell citrus without UT. So, as Spurrier used to say.
I was just going to say real quick, like starting with A&M, and as we move up the list here to the contenders, I notice a lot of these teams have somewhat significant losses on the defensive side of the ball, and I think for a lot of these programs, it's going to just come down to how quickly can the incoming transfers, gel together and start performing at the defense like some of these teams had last year. Like Texas A&M, we talked about them; they had a great defense last year. Well, they lost a ton of people, so. Is Elko going to be able to get them all on the same page quick? Missouri also has a few defensive losses, but again, they got a good enough offense. How quickly are their incoming transfers going to be able to gel? And Tennessee, the same thing. They've only got 3 defensive starters returning. Their QB, Nico Iamaleava, pretty highly touted. Very interesting to see what he can do. He did start in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa last year. Only went 12 of 19 for 151 yards and a touchdown, but he rushed for 3 touchdowns as well. He literally was all the scoring, and I believe Tennessee had a defensive touchdown that game, and they won like 35-0. So yeah, reason for optimism, definitely. Like I said, just depends if the defense can gel quick or not.
Yeah, I spent an hour debating between Tennessee and Missouri, and trying to kind of put the two against each other. Because I think both have a shot here. Yeah, a long shot, but they both have a shot. But it came down to what Darren just said, defense, right? I'm concerned about the defensive side of the ball for Tennessee because of the losses they've had with players here. And so, and as anybody who's listening thus far has been listening, I'm kind of heavily into defenses, and I talk a lot about, defense winning games and all that. So that, to me, was kind of what flipped between Tennessee and Missouri, is that the defensive side of the ball concerns me with Tennessee.
You spent an hour on that? If you talked to me, I could have saved you 59 minutes and 49 seconds. Yes. Damn, dude.
Listen, our listeners deserve Pete, okay? Let him study, for crying out loud.
I know. Florida's going to beat Tennessee this year, no doubt.
Oh, my God.
Double or nothing bet for the.
All right, I was just going to say, we should just have a side bet.
Double or nothing because you owe me for Florida State getting screwed out of the playoffs.
Oh my God.
Double or nothing.
That's season 1 news. We're not talking about that anymore.
Death, taxes, and Florida beating Tennessee. Just the way it is. I can't explain it, Darren.
I know you can't. You're down there, so you got a better feel for that. It does happen.
Peyton Manning couldn't even beat the Gators.
I'm just telling you right now. You look at the team like Tennessee. I think still has a better defense, and if you put Nico against who the hell's the Florida quarterback? I don't even care. I'm taking who? Mertz? Oh God, yeah, I'm taking Nico Suave all day long, baby.
Well, me too, but it doesn't matter. The stars align. There's going to be comment.
When it happens, I'm making you a T-shirt that says Nico Suave, and you're going to have to wear it for the next show. That's it.
Fine.
That's it. We're on. It's on.
Just in time for the YouTube channel, I guess.
Perfect.
All right, moving on from that pile of crap. Let's go to LSU.
Speaking of no defense. Perfect.
Exactly. Well, also a lot less offense too. Their top 3 offensive players were drafted last night before pick 25. Because I think the Jaguars got Thomas Jr. there. Was that pick 23? So the other 2 went in the top 10. Woo! Let's see what Brian Kelly can do this year. What do you think? That's your old boy there from Notre Dame. How do you feel his chances are?
Well, speaking of Notre Dame, I think one of the other offensive losses that you didn't touch on was their offensive coordinator bolted for Notre Dame. Garrett Nussmeier, not terrible, but he's not Jaden Daniels, but then again, nobody is. No. Favorable schedule, but until you can stop somebody, literally only Vanderbilt had a worse defense than this team did. And this was a team that was like ranked in the top 10 before last season started. So, a lot of their offensive stats were because of Jaden Daniels and, neighbors. This is a show me program. Show me you can beat somebody. Mm-hmm. You don't really have a tough road schedule. You are fortunate to get Ole Miss, Bama, and the Sooners in your building. But until you can stop somebody, I wouldn't.
Interesting non-conference game against Southern Cal. in Las Vegas.
No, there's another 87.5 over, Pete, that you can bet.
Absolutely. And this is a good team to play like over-unders on because I agree. Like defense, non-existent. I think their over-under for wins is 9.5 for LSU this year. I am hard under on that number. I think it could be 8 or 9, but it's not going to be more than 9.5. They can't stop anybody. I don't know how it's going to change. So I just don't. As we've said many times before, I do not like teams that don't play defense. So I don't see what they're doing here.
That's half of college football, unfortunately. I mean, there's not a so.
All right, but in this conference, you got to have you have to have defense. I mean,
you do. Yeah.
Yeah, or at least a good pass rush. I mean, that'll make your defense better, even if it's mediocre. But
agreed.
Moving on, we got our top 4. Even though without Nick Saban, they're still got the best odds here at plus 900. This is an interesting lean, just because DeBoer's not a bad coach, or else they wouldn't have hired him. So if he was that bad. He still has a lot of talent there. It didn't all go to Florida State. Only about 5 or 6 of them went there. So there's a lot of talent returning, a lot of talent leaving. If the number was a little bit higher, I would see tying up some money in the Bama future. As far as on their schedule, they play at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Interesting game, but then they got Georgia, first SEC game of the year. Boom. So September 28th, that's going to be a hell of a week in college football, I think.
27 unit play on Georgia. There is no way Georgia's forgetting last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true too.
I don't know what the spread is. It might be kept down a little bit because Bama's at home, but I am all, there's some big games that there's already lines for, but I don't know if anybody's got a line out on that, but I would seriously consider Georgia. Yeah. They just from that game against Florida State, and I know they didn't have anybody, playing, but Georgia and Alabama, September 28th. Georgia is only a 3.5 point favorite at FanDuel. Bet it now.
Bet it now.
Bet it heavy. Bet it now.
You're a FanDuel user. Shut us off and go bet that.
Hold on, let me get another mortgage out of my house real quick.
There's no way. I mean, I don't know if anybody watches. I watch very little spring game football, but Alabama's defense was terrible in their first spring game. Milroe, credit to him. I didn't think he would take as big a step forward as he did. That offense will still be good, but I mean, your leading tackler was Caleb Downs, who went to Ohio State. The next closest guy on that team had 40 less tackles than he did. I just, and the whole Saban thing, Kalen DeBoer, and nobody is Nick Saban. And now you're bringing in a new coach, and your defense looks like it's going to struggle early on. I don't think you're going to have it all fixed by the end of September when you play Georgia. Too short a number. This is like the most public college football team there is, maybe except for the Irish, but I'm not touching Bama here.
They do have a terrible road schedule at Wisconsin, at Georgia, at LSU, at Oklahoma.
No, the Georgia game's at home, but still, it's
that's right, Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, so I mean,
yep.
Going to Tennessee, going to LSU, going to Oklahoma. Not that LSU and Oklahoma are world beaters, but I mean, if you don't have a defense, those teams can put up 40 on you before you even know what the hell's going on. So,
and they likely will. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, another show me program. Show me you figure out how to play defense, and then maybe we'll talk. But
right.
I'm expecting a Georgia thumping on the 28th of September.
Yeah, I mean, this is another team. 9.5 wins is the over/under. I like the under on that as well. I think. Obviously they still have some talent there. I don't think the defense is going to be all that great, and I think we're going to see these slow. I don't want to say demise is a strong word, but this team's going to back up a number of steps over the next couple of years. That's what I'm expecting, and we'll start to see that this year.
Interesting thoughts. All right, targeting winner's favorite here, Ole Miss. Plus 600. They're getting better odds than Bama. I think that's ridiculous. He's not as bad as Cristobal, but I put Kiffin in there with that ilk. I just don't think he can, put it all together. He can definitely recruit. He's a great recruiter. He'll get the talent in there, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to do something to screw it up. Zero faith in the coach. So I am not touching that, especially at plus 600. I mean,
yeah, I thought as you said that, I'm like, dude, did I send you a copy of my notes? Because you literally just touched on, like, I had Ole Miss as a lean. If you're a believer in that team, I mean, their group of transfers, like one of the top rated groups in the country. They can score. I mean, their defense actually played really well. The schedule's really, really favorable for them. But again, how many times is Lane Kiffin going to go for it in a big game on, 4th and 13 from his own 24, and cost his team a touchdown, and, they lose a game by 4 points. That's the only reason I cannot back this. Oh, somebody else's dogs.
Excellent.
Those aren't mine.
Well, we know it's not Pete's dog. Sorry,
yes,
Pete.
Yes. I mean, if he's doing that, we have issues. But I'll just insert my quick Penn State comments here, right? Lane Kiffin and everything I said about Penn State, you can just slap that right on Ole Miss here, where he's going to, the team is going to start off well this year. I mean, I like their schedule early on. They play Georgia on November 9th. Probably lose that, and they're going to play at Florida on November 23rd, and they'll find a way to lose that game, right? That's the game where I think they'll be in contention, and he'll do something idiotic like he normally does, lose that game, and that'll be the end. So, that's
James Franklin, Lane Kiffin, Mario Cristobal, and Matt Rule.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
How do you trust any of those four in a big game?
This is the year. If Matt Rule wants to change my mind, this is the year to do it.
I agree. This is the year.
Yeah, this is year 2 of his 3 years, and every time he goes to a program, the third year they're a 10-win or better program. So this big year for him as well. But
right. All right. Well, we knew we were going to get here eventually as we go up the ladder of all the teams. The top 2 for the odds. Who do you want to start with first? You want to start with Texas or Georgia?
Yeah, start with Texas because Georgia's the favorite. So let's save them for last.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's look at the schedule. Nice game week 2, Pete.
It's going to be fun. Unfortunately, I think Michigan is going to lose, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's similar to the A&M Notre Dame game, though. If you want to look at Texas, hope that Michigan gives them a game or beats them, and then, hop on the Longhorns the next day if the number moves. But yeah, that's going to be
Stallions got any drone footage of Texas practice or anything to send over to Pete or nothing? Okay.
I think you're right on it, though, Darren. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Texas is going to win this conference. That's my opinion. I would love to see them lose to Michigan, to see that number move a bit, because then I'd like to jump on that number. Because I think at the right number, I would absolutely bet them. It's too tight right now. It's not worth the bet.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, this team should be one of the last 2 playing for the conference title. I mean, they're just good. The schedule is, they got Oklahoma on a neutral field. I know they lost that one last year, but is Ewers going to throw 3 picks again? Probably not. Georgia's always going to be tough.
Arch Manning in there.
Yeah, well, Arch Manning is not playing unless Quinn Ewers gets hurt or something. Sorry, Ray. I know you're a big Arch Manning guy, but not him. They get Georgia, but they get Georgia at home. I mean, that's going to be a monster game.
That'll be awesome. Yeah.
Going to A&M is your only tough road game. Sorry, this team's making the final 2 in this conference. So,
agreed.
What was the number? 320. That's kind of low, but I can see why it's that low. But that's a great chance to still monetize your bet, come that first Saturday in December. So I agree with everything Pete said. Again, I see Texas playing that first Saturday in December for this conference title.
Yeah, for a lot of these conferences, I used it more for hedge hunting. So, unless if I see something like last year with Washington, I was like, that's a good number for Washington from last year. Texas, Oklahoma and Georgia back to back. If they can get one of those wins, which it'll most likely be Dallas or Oklahoma in Dallas, they'll probably win that game.
Yeah, I think they could get is in between those games. I don't have their schedule up here in front of me, but is that do they have a bye week in between those 2 games?
No,
because I know everybody's got like 2 bye weeks this year. I just wonder if they get a break.
They have a bye week before Oklahoma, so they'll be playing Oklahoma coming off a bye.
Oh, okay.
Technically, they have a bye after Georgia when they play Vanderbilt. Then they have another bye going into Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and A&M.
Okay.
So they can probably use the second stringers to play Vanderbilt and give the first stringers a rest. And after that game. But, yeah, that would be something if they had a bye in between.
Yeah.
The net, whoo.
Yeah, and I always target a huge game like that. Like, look at the game before. Like, what's Georgia going to show to, against whoever they play before Texas? And likewise, what is Texas going to do, that week before Georgia? I mean, they're not going to like totally open up the playbook and be like, yeah, this is what we're going to do, because they want to give these other teams a chance to look at you.
Georgia's playing Mississippi State the week before that game,
so they're not going to show anything. They'll win that one by default.
Yeah, Oklahoma and Texas both have byes before their game against each other.
Yeah,
they're both coming off a bye for that week.
Yeah, I'm just always curious to what a team shows, before like their game of the year or whatever game they got circled on their calendars. A lot of times those spreads will be inflated. It might be a bad time to jump on a dog because, like, okay, Mississippi State's probably going to be getting 24.5 points. But when it's 38-7 at halftime, does Mississippi State sneak in the back door there, and get it to 38-14 because Georgia doesn't give a crap. They're trying to stay healthy for Texas. I don't like to play too many, huge underdogs like that, but that may be something to consider as well.
Yeah. So overall, who do you think would win? I'm just still. I know you're saying Texas. I'm still saying Georgia until someone shows me they can take
Georgia. Georgia, right? Yeah. I mean, look at their schedule. Their schedule. They have two. They're at Texas, as we talked about, and they're at Ole Miss. Right. To me, those are the two big games for Georgia. Yeah, they play Florida the week before Ole Miss on November 2nd. So, that's a semi-tough stretch for them per se. But, will they lose one of those games? Probably. I think they're going to lose at Texas, but they're not losing them both. So they could have one loss.
Yeah. The only thing I worry about with Texas is they're going to have, I believe that, they're losing that Sweat guy on the line to the NFL. I believe they lost one or two of their linebackers. They lost some people in the secondary. So, they've got some losses at all three groups on that starting defense. Offense should be fine. I know they lost Worthy and their other receiver escapes me, but they got Alabama transfer Isaiah Bond to come in. They got Golden, the guy from Houston, as well. So I think offensively they're going to be fine. Again, one of these teams in the top half of the conference here. How quickly are all the new guys on defense going to fit together? And for them, hopefully in time before Georgia comes to town.
Amen. Well, all right. Let's want to go back and review our picks there. And
are we not talking about Georgia? Do we have anything to say about Georgia? Or are we just assuming it's going to be Georgia, Texas in the
well, I just think Georgia's going to win the SEC.
Yeah. But you know what? We talk about key games early in the season. They have Clemson, which I know is not conference, but that'll be an interesting game to see because I think Georgia's going to stomp Clemson. But
go Dogs.
Again, just to see how far advanced. And, and even for Clemson, for any ACC bettors that took a shot at Clemson, see what they look like against Georgia.
Sure.
I don't think you're going to want to watch it for too long, but Georgia actually gave themselves a little bit of a challenge this year, going to Bama, going to Texas, going to Ole Miss. Again, they had a 3-game stretch last year where they were playing ranked teams. They smoked every one of them. So I think that loss to Bama is going to fuel them. I see this. I think the odds makers got this one right. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a Georgia-Texas final.
Agreed.
3.5, huh? Against Alabama.
Yeah. I might bet that. I'm going to upload this episode and I throw a few more little.
Doing it right now.
I didn't even think about looking at DraftKings to see if they had it out, but yeah, I just know FanDuel had it out for a while. I was like, wow, 3.5. Florida State. They got Florida State, the Dublin game. Georgia's 13.5 over Clemson. By the way, we were talking about that game just a second ago.
Notre Dame's laying. Notre Dame's getting 1.5 against Texas A&M.
Yeah, they're getting 2 on DraftKings. No line for Georgia Bama yet on DraftKings, but yep, laying 3.
Well, I want that action.
Yeah,
I want that action.
That's good. All right, gentlemen, we've wrapped up the conference. Any long shots, any leans, any bets that you've made or will be making? Timmy.
All right. Well, I'm leaning Texas A&M. I'm going to root for them to lose to Notre Dame first. They're at plus, what are they? Plus 2,000. Hopefully get it up to 2,500 or 3,000 after a loss to Notre Dame. Then go ahead and bet them. So I'm a lean and hold for Texas A&M for a unit. And I guess I got a sushi bet with you. I got Florida over Tennessee. Regardless of whatever happens, Florida will beat Tennessee. and I'll take a spicy tuna roll or something.
That's fine. Still, are you coming up this summer? We'll take you to O'Brien Inn. We'll get you one of those nice gorgonzola encrusted steaks.
You already owe me one of those for
I do.
Getting screwed. So
I do. You're right.
I will collect.
It's fine.
And Pete, what do you said you got Missouri? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm putting 1 unit on Missouri. I already placed that bet today, so that is in. And other than that, I think Texas is going to win this conference, but that number is too tight for me, so I'm not going to play that.
I think Georgia's going to win it for the same reason. Number's too tight. Not betting it. It's not worth tying up your money for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah,
anything to add?
No, I agree with you on the A&M thought. That's kind of like my long shot here at plus 2,000. I do have a slight lean towards Ole Miss, even though the Lane Kiffin thing prevented me from actually betting that. I have no bets currently for this particular conference. But if Texas, for whatever reason, ends up at maybe like plus 400, I would probably, snag that and maybe not even head. Because on neutral field, I think Texas could play Georgia pretty solidly. So no bets for me. Although I did do Virginia Tech today. They got plus 1,800, which is available at FanDuel and DraftKings. So I did lock that in from a few shows ago.
All right. Well, on that note, let's end this. As usual, you could find us on Facebook and on Twitter at Target Wins. You can also email us at cfbdudes@yahoo.com. Thank you all for listening. You can also check out Pete and I at the Small Timers Racing Stable, that podcast on Apple and Spotify. Once again, we thank you all for listening. This has been the SEC Preview. Enjoy the rest of the NFL draft and have a good weekend, everybody. All right, Charlie and Harley.
My wife just walked in the door, so